I'm Jonathan Evans. At 9/11 I was working in MI5 and I was the director for transnational threats. 10 days before 9/11, on the 1st of September, I had become the director responsible for international terrorism. So 9/11 was a really major incident and a watershed really as far as my career was concerned. Reflecting back on it, I think two things come to mind. The first is that was the point, 9/11 was the point where you might say that the policy community and the political community caught up with the security community on international terrorism. Because until that point, MI5, MI6, the police were working very hard on Islamist terrorism, Algerian-based and Al-Qaeda, but it really wasn't very much of interest to the policy world. And that, of course, changed hugely at 9/11, and suddenly this became one of the central and critical issues for government and for the Prime Minister. So that change was extremely significant as far as we were concerned. The other reflection I'd have is that, in a way, 9/11 was the result of globalisation. That in the 90s there was a narrative of taking Western values and Western commercial interests globally, but there wasn't an expectation that this would then come back our direction. But 9/11 showed that it could work in both directions, and therefore the values, the views of those who have radically different expectations from ours suddenly were visited on us in a terrible way. So globalisation was the background of 9/11, and of course in a way the response to 9/11 over the next 10 years was also to do with globalisation, because before then, certainly in the UK, our intelligence and security apparatus was still really predicated on a big distinction between what was happening domestically and what was happening internationally. And we had to completely rethink our way of working within the intelligence community, between the intelligence community and the police, and more widely with new relationships internationally, which would previously have been thought very difficult, but became necessary as we responded to this massive event. What lessons are there for us for the future? I think I would mention two. The first is that these massive events, these huge watershed moments, have a very, very long tail, and therefore our response to them is a marathon and not a sprint. 20 years after 9/11, we are still working through the implications of that in various ways, both the implications of the threat itself from Al-Qaeda and its associated groups and the groups that have sprung from it, but also the implications of our response to 9/11, which in turn set up unintended consequences. And we've seen that very clearly in the last few weeks with Afghanistan. And the other thing that I would say is that because this is going to be a marathon, because there aren't any quick or easy answers to these problems, we need to maintain the moral high ground as far as we can. I can remember at the point when the photographs were released of abuse at Abu Ghraib, feeling that this was a huge setback to us in terms of our security in the West, and therefore we need to be thinking very carefully about the moral basis of what we are doing, as well as the shorter term practical operational benefits that we might see. So keeping an eye on the long-term moral horizon seems to me to be vital if we're going to be able to maintain a long-term struggle.